The topic is using resources responsibly. We have a panel of 3 experts who are going to take us through this useful topic. First of all, I have some housekeeping announcements to make. Again, a reminder, please put your telephones on silent. This meeting, that's another reminder, is not on Chatham House rule, is on the record, which means that anybody who's present at this meeting may use the information collected and identify the speakers or any other participants. Without further ado, I'd like to call on our presenters. They each have 15 minutes, and after the presentations, we'll open the discussion for a question and answer session. So I'd like to invite first Feriel Zerouki, Head of Government and Industry Relations at De Beers Group, who's going to talk about best practice principles.
Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Thank you for inviting me here today to talk to you about the best practice principles across the supply chain. I would like to start by telling you a little bit about us. De Beers is the world's leading rough diamond mining company. Our mines are based in Botswana, South Africa, Namibia, and Canada, and they are either wholly owned or joint ventures with government, the perfect example being Botswana. Simply put, we mine the diamonds and sell them to a select list of customers, which we call site holders. Our footprint, however, is clearly not representative of our supply chain. When I say supply chain, I think of all of the companies and the organizations that the diamonds that we mine pass through before making their way into the consumer's hands. And I've tried to map it out in its simplest form, and what you will see here in the light blue rectangles are the number of entities that deal in our diamonds across the globe. As we are all aware, diamonds are an emotional product, and consumer confidence is therefore paramount in ensuring the continued desire in our product. De Beers is the only rough diamond mining company whose brand and name is also recognized on the consumer level. This recognition comes with trust, and so it is our responsibility to maintain and grow this trust, and not just for De Beers. De Beers needs to use its leadership position to earn trust for the diamond brand by upholding the highest ethical standards to meet and exceed consumers' expectations. In order to do this, we must stay aware of the ever-changing reputational concerns of our consumers, and it is our collective responsibility to ensure that our product, the diamond, remains protected. Accountability and living up to diamonds underlines our approach. We therefore strive for the highest ethical standards of business integrity on our own operations, and we use our influence as a sector leader to raise standards across the entire diamond supply chain. Embedded in our culture are the best practice principles, a set of mandatory environmental, social, and ethical requirements that we apply to our own operations, as well as our site holders and our respective contractors. Human rights is an integral component of the best practice principles, also known as the BPPs. We are therefore committed to identifying, managing, and reducing human rights issues across the entire supply chain. And finally, we work meticulously through the Kimberley process the industry system of warranties, and of course our BPPs, the best practice principles, to ensure that conflict diamonds are eliminated from the world's diamond flows. De Beers has been actively involved in the Kimberley process since its inception in 2000 and implementation in 2003. We launched our flagship Best Practice Principles program shortly after the implementation of the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme, and successfully rolled out the program across the entire supply chain, from exploration all the way through to retail by 2005. For those of you who don't know, the BPPs comprise of 3 elements. First, we have a comprehensive set of standards. Second, a full management system. And third, an independent third-party assurance program. These 3 elements have been created to address the challenges raised, streamline processes across the supply chain, and demonstrate unrefuted compliance to all interested parties. We have had confirmation that over 371,000 people across 51 countries who work in the diamond industry have been covered by the BPPs in 2015. Less than 6% of this number represents De Beers employees. Our outreach has therefore been extremely significant. Having said all of this, the BPPs go beyond being simply a set of ethical standards. They are also the basis on which De Beers carries out its own business and selects its partners. For our clients and their contractors, there is a contractual obligation to sign up to these principles. And if a company is not able to demonstrate or maintain compliance, we simply cannot do business with it. The principles are audited by an independent third-party auditor and guarantee to consumers that international ethical standards have been met and in some cases exceeded in the production, cutting and polishing, manufacturing and sale of our diamonds. Furthermore, a yearly review of the standards and emerging risks allow De Beers to evolve the BPPs and protect our diamond pipeline. I'm going to attempt to summarize the actual assurance process. Of utmost importance, our supply chain is mapped. It's mapped out quite extensively. This includes all of the entities of De Beers, those of our site holders, and our respective contractors. Each entity is required to fill out a self-assessment on an annual basis, allowing them to understand the requirements and new requirements of the year. Auditors will then conduct desktop audits and physical verification visits on a sample basis. The data is then collected and auditors report back to De Beers on the status of compliance of our own group, as well as everyone else that is involved. The process, program, and management system have been reviewed and cross-recognized by the International Standard-Setting Organization, also known as the Responsible Jewellery Council, whose own standards have been voted best in class by an independent study. The RJC is an external organization in which we are founding members. De Beers supports the RJC as it is able to reach out to companies that deal with diamonds but fall outside of our supply chain. As a result, organizations like the RJC support our overarching mission to protect our product and our industry as a whole by leveling out the playing field. These days, BPP and RJC compliance has become a gated criteria for doing business with many players in the industry. We have harmonized the BPPs and RJC standards in order to add value to our site holders and eliminate duplication of efforts. As a result, harmonization has increased the appetite for compliance, as it has moved away from being a cost of doing business with De Beers, and sometimes I hear a burden, to an opportunity which will help diamantaires stand out, gain new business, and save money. These high standards have had a positive impact on De Beers and our partners. The BPPs maintain diamond equity as they are a great tool used to protect the reputation of our pipeline and therefore our diamonds. Maintaining consumer confidence has in turn enabled us to uphold the value in diamonds, commercially beneficial not only to our company, but more importantly, to our producer partners. De Beers Group entities are dispersed around the globe, each working in a different environment and tackling different issues. The BPPs provide a common language, linking all of us into the same company culture, really breaking down those silos that could have otherwise existed. In addition to this, it is a great tool for a yearly health check in the company for our shareholders and other interested stakeholders. The yearly program covers requirements of many other external certification initiatives, and so has facilitated many certifications throughout our entire group with minimal preparation. For example, all of our mines are OSAS 18001 certified, and our entire group is RJC certified. When new legislation is launched, the BPPs facilitate education and training throughout the group, and we are able to evidence compliance within a year. In fact, because the BPPs are reviewed annually, we are often ahead of the curve and can react quickly to incorporate changes in legislation. For example, when the UK Modern Slavery Act comes into force in 2017, we will already be able to demonstrate compliance because through the BPPs, we have a detailed assessment of our entire supply chain. So moving on now to our clients, the site holders. In order to become a customer of De Beers, diamond companies are invited to apply once every 3 years. One of the gated criteria of becoming a customer is compliance with the best practice principles. Those applicants that are successful after an in-depth screening process are awarded the name of site holder. This name has become a trusted brand. Banking institutions, which cover credit for the industry, understand the compliance and annual audit requirements that site holders must participate in order to attain and maintain site holder status. Site holder employees are also working under much better conditions in developing countries. This is easily seen when walking around the cutting centres. This has resulted in lower staff turnover, which is quite economical if you think about the time it takes to teach an employee how to cut and polish a diamond. As is very common in the industry, due diligence is a starting point before doing business or associating yourself or your brand with any other organisation. Site holders own the BPP reports as well as the RJC certificates generated by these third-party auditors, and so are free to use them as evidence for ethical integrity, for commercial relationships, and relieve themselves as much as possible from audit fatigue. Finally, I'd like to finish off with this slide. A picture is worth 1,000 words. See for yourselves. These were taken by me in the same cutting centre, on the same stretch of road, and in the same day. You can guess which one participates in our BPP program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Feriel, for that interesting presentation, and thank you for keeping to your time. Our next speaker is Ineke van der Weijden, who's Program Director at Tokafala. She'll talk to us about partnering with enterprise development.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The topic of this session is how to use resources responsibly. And I think what, for me, that means is how you can use all the means that you have, all the resources that are available to you in the context of this partnership and the Society of Botswana to achieve the vision that you have set with each other. In Tokafala, as an enterprise development program, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs. And one of the first things we do with a new entrepreneur that enrolls in our program is we ask them, where do you see your business 2 to 3 years from now? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? And then we asked them to write down what resources do you have available to you to realize those aspirations. And for many of them, that instantly becomes about money in the bank, or in the case of an entrepreneur, lack thereof. But we tried to coach them to see that resources are a lot broader than just money. It includes assets that you might have, a building or a vehicle. It includes your skills and your capabilities of you and of your staff. And it also includes intangibles like a network or maybe a reputation. And I think a similar thing applies here. For years, the narrative was around how profits made from diamonds could bring the country financial security. And it certainly has achieved a lot of that. It's been successful in many ways. But what it possibly did not do is create a thriving, diversified economy. And it's come up this morning before. So when the country started to think more seriously about diversification, the view had to become one of what other resources do we have available just in diamond wealth to get us there. So when thinking about diversification, I think you need several strategies to get there. You need to use the resources that are available internal within Botswana, but you also need to look at what is available in external markets. But as the Honourable Minister said this morning, it certainly includes the people of Botswana. And one of the important categories of people to drive diversifications are entrepreneurs. They are, by definition, diverse. There are many of them. They all do something different, and they're very passionate, typically, about what they do. They drive innovation, maybe not on an international scale, but certainly on a national level. They bring in new products and services that, on its own, then drive new economic opportunities. They're a great creator of job opportunities, specifically growing a small, established, proven business to a medium-sized businesses is a great engine for job growth. And they form a solid middle class that forms a backbone of a steady growing economy. So when De Beers and the government of Botswana and Botswana and Anglo-American in 2013 put their heads together to figure out how they could support enterprise development as part of the diversification effort, they brought more to the table than just their money. They brought to the table expertise. Anglo-American has many years of experience in running enterprise development programs across the globe. They brought to the table credibility and scale through the involvement of the government. And they brought to the table the power and the appeal of the supply chain and the reputation of De Beers and Botswana have in this country. And together that resulted in the Tokafala program. And in the Tokafala program, we support entrepreneurs. And simply put, we do that by mentoring them and training them in business skills. This can include topics like financial record keeping, how to access a loan, how to segment your market, how to optimize your operations or deal with HR issues, very practical business-related topics. Most entrepreneurs are incredibly passionate about their business, and they're typically very well versed in what they do. But nobody ever told them how to run a business. And there's no shame in that, but there's a lot of power in realizing that there's a lot of improvement to be achieved there. And I think there's a couple of other elements to our program that I would like to highlight here. One is impact. If you set out a program like this, you need to make sure that it is actually achieving what you set out to do. So we've set ourselves clear metrics, and I'll come back to that in a little bit on that. The second element is scale. Real impact can only be achieved if we create a scale. And by expanding geographically, for instance, recently we expanded to Francistown, and to other segments of the SME sector, for instance, micro or startups. And the third element is sustainability. It came up this morning before. Sustainability is important because, in the end, diversification is a long-term strategy. And we strive to achieve this sustainability by working closely with all sorts of different players in the enterprise development sphere. This could be other programs run by government or by NGOs. It could also be for-profit organizations like banks that do SME financing. As a program, we try to work as much as we can with others to try and see if we can find synergies, and then we can share capabilities. Now, a little bit about the entrepreneurs that we do support, because I find that a very interesting story. The program started operating in January 2014, so we've been running for almost 2 years. In that time, we've supported a little over 150 entrepreneurs, and they truly represent the diversity of what Botswana's economy has to offer. A couple of statistics. Over 40% are women or co-owned. Up to a third fall in the youth category, so they're under 35 at moment of enrollment. 2/3 is from Gaborone, but that number is dropping now that we've started to become more active outside of the city. 60% have no outstanding debt the moment they enroll, which means they probably have never managed to access a source of commercial finance. 68% have never participated in any other enterprise development program. And from an industry perspective, we pretty much include everything. We have health, we have tourism, we have IT, but about 50% is more the traditional industries like consumer goods and industrial goods. And we think this little snapshot provides a good overview of the diversity and the strength that brings to the economy, because the more diverse the offering is, the more chances they have individually of succeeding as well. I told you earlier that we find impact and measuring impact very important, and we recently finished our first impact assessment on the entrepreneurs that enrolled in 2014. We're now a year later, and we wanted to see how did they perform. And we looked at 3 key metrics. One is revenue growth, the other one is employment, and the third one is access to finance. Well, I'm really proud to share some of these results with you. For revenue growth, overall, all the entrepreneurs combined that enrolled in 2014 grew the revenue with about 60%. That's a tremendous number in 1 year. On an individual level, each of them had targets to grow between 15 to 40%, depending on the size. And if you look at an individual level, most of them made those targets. Not all. I don't think that is ever feasible, but most of them made those targets. Employment. Today we have supported, to date, as of actually the end of the third quarter of this year, we have supported 1,200 jobs. The aim is to reach 2,000 by the end of next year. So we're in line to achieve this. And we even expect this to get bigger because you can expect revenue growth to come before job growth. So the second year and the third year after exiting a program, we expect our entrepreneurs to even become bigger employees. So, and the third indicator was on access to finance. 38% of our clients managed to access finance in the last year. Our target was 20%, so that's twice as much, which is also a great testament to the work we do around financial literacy and how they should think about applying for loans. So overall, I think we've really managed to add a lot of value to the 150 or so entrepreneurs that we've worked with so far. But there are some lessons learned. And I would like to share them here, or at least some of them here, because I think they're lessons for all of us. First of all, SMEs don't function in isolation. A country the size of Botswana with 2 million people alone, you can't create a diversified economy with just small and medium businesses, no matter how talented the people are in the country. You need access to markets. You need a broader scope. You need to see yourself as part of a region and an international landscape. You also need bigger businesses. You need the Botswanas or the retailers or the banks to collaborate with the SMEs. And I think in the last 2 years, I've had many conversations with people at the government and the beers in Botswana about this topic. And I certainly don't doubt that the willingness is there to do this and the understanding, but I think some actions are lacking to realize the potential here. The second challenge is access to finance. Botswana actually has a tremendous diversity in products and services offered to SMEs with regards to finance. You have a SIDA, you have a youth fund, you have commercial banks that have SME financing available, and there's some other players. However, it turns out to still be quite hard for the two parties, the entrepreneur and the financial institutions, to really link up with each other. So I think we all need to get better at figuring out how we can put those two parties together. And the third lesson learned is on a program level. We spent 2 years learning a lot and understanding a lot. And it's now our job to make our approach even more tailor-made to what we know is needed. But it's also now the crucial moment to start driving scale and sustainability. After 2 years, this is the moment for that to really start flying. So those are some lessons learned. Just on what I think the future might bring. And I think the future is full of opportunities when it comes to enterprise development and the entrepreneurial sector of Botswana. But with opportunities comes responsibility. For the program, I see us continue to add a lot of value to the businesses and the lives of local entrepreneurs through our one-on-one interaction with them. But our opportunity lies in expanding this to include more SMEs, which is something we're already discussing with the government and the other partners in Tokafala. I also think that the program has a role to play in improving this link between small businesses and the larger businesses, be that on the supplier side, for instance, through the Botswana supply chain, or on the consumer side, for instance, with banks or other professional services providers, like accountants or website builders, very practical things that are important for entrepreneurs as well. And this is probably a real challenge to make that match between big business and small business. But in Botswana, Botswana is a relatively small country, and people are really open to talk and coordinate. So this is a puzzle that I feel is worth and is possible to solve in Botswana, and how really exciting would that be? And linked to that, and maybe as a first concrete step, I think there's an opportunity for this partnership between De Beers, Botswana, the government of Botswana, and Anglo to include more partners, more large businesses in Botswana that can bring their supply chain and their relative power and their reputation to the program, so even more entrepreneurs can benefit. Lastly, for the entrepreneurs themselves, I see a lot of opportunity, but that too comes with responsibility. Botswana SMEs have much to build on. There is a diverse set of entrepreneurial opportunities available. There's a relatively streamlined policy environment like easy company registration. There's high education level. There is a culture that pushes entrepreneurship as a choice rather than a necessity, driving mostly motivated and talented people to enter this lifestyle. And what I personally find very exciting is to see that there's a young generation of entrepreneurs that is bringing in the new tech type of ventures, mobile payments, mobile phones, car tracking. But Botswana entrepreneurs are also notorious opportunity chasers. They'll sell bicycles to one day and they'll provide accounting services the next, if that is where they think the opportunity lies. And if they want to build a real solid growing business, they will have to focus on those opportunities to provide a real future, and that is built on the skills and the resources and the capabilities that they can bring to that opportunity. And they will have to commit to this. This requires hard work, and there are no shortcuts in the life of an entrepreneur. In summary, I think Tokafala is a good example of what can be done if the partners here put their brain power, their experience, their credibility, and their money on the table to establish activities that really lead to economic diversification. Hopefully they can do this again and again and achieve more of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ineke. Our last speaker is Andrew Bone, who's Executive Director of Responsible Jewelry Council. His topic is going to be consumer demand for responsible sourcing and social engagement. Andrew, please.
Thank you, Muzong. Thank you, Ineke, and thank you, Feriel, as well, for agreeing to share the platform with me this afternoon. Distinguished and honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all. I'd just like to say what a thrill it is for me, a sheer delight to be amongst so many good and old friends again, having had the privilege of working for De Beers for 38 years. I'm now 4 months into this job as Executive Director of the Responsible Jewelry Council. This is what I'm here to talk to you today about. But I'd also like to thank the government of Botswana for its hospitality and welcoming us all here, and under some very strained conditions as well. And we in London are always complaining about the rain, the rain, the rain. It's when you come here, you realize what a blessing rain is. And you realize what a beautiful and precious commodity water is. And I'd also like to go further in thanking the people of Botswana, the people here, the staff, in the hotel, and everywhere you go, because the people of Botswana are never short of a smile and a very warm greeting. So thank you. Alex mentioned this morning, 2006, Kimberley process. It was when Botswana was chair, and it was under the avuncular eye and supervision of Mr. Mashishani. It was also, in my experience, having worked with the Kimberley process for 15 years, the most successful Kimberley process meeting ever. What it achieved then was groundbreaking. We helped other African governments to be able to come into full compliance. It was the only time that I can remember that all three legs of the Kimberley process, civil society, industry, and government, came together to do some real good. And that was under the leadership of the government of Botswana. Further to that, they've shown that they're not shy either of being courageous and brave. And I look at Jacob Tamage here as well for his very courageous and valiant chairing of the ad hoc committee on reforms in the Kimberley process. We got a few of the points through, but not all of them. But nevertheless, again, it demonstrated that the government of Botswana is willing and able to take a leadership role in protecting the equity of diamonds. Feriel mentioned it in her presentation. And I just want to emphasize, the first thing that anyone should know about diamonds is that it's an emotional product. And therefore, protecting that emotional equity is very difficult, is very challenging, but a challenge that we must all rise to. And again, the government of Botswana has shown that protecting diamond equity is as important as making it. Now, the Responsible Jewellery Council, I believe, plays a key role in helping governments, industry, and civil society coming together to recognize that this industry can stand up for itself and take leadership in the role of ethical behavior and the way it conducts its business. The RJC is now 10 years old, and it was set up for two main reasons. One of them was because at the time the BPPs was being set up, BHP, Rio, and others were coming in also with their own standards. So it was a way of harmonizing a lot of the standards there and relieving what was called auditing burden, the burden of auditing. The other reason was that the industry wanted to take a lead in creating something that went from mining through to retail. So along the whole of the value chain. This had never been done before. And it was an audacious project, an audacious ambition. But here we are, 10 years on, and we have made enormous progress and inroads into creating world standards, world-class standards. I brought some, we have a report, and there are some copies around somewhere. I'm not sure where they've gone, but just a few slides here just to highlight some of the key points from that report. This just highlights our vision and our mission. And again, you'll find that also online at responsiblejewelry.com. And also, this is the report, obviously, on 2014. Total RJC members of 571. We now have over 700 so far this year in 2015. And this is a time also remembering of unparalleled challenges, in particular in the diamond industry, but also in other commodities. And not forgetting that we also cover gold and platinum. My chairman often tells me off saying, Andy, you've got to remember, this is about gold and platinum as well as diamonds. But no, you can take the boy out of the diamond industry, but you can't take diamonds out of the boy. So I'm learning, though. And certifications granted, 476. So year-to-date 2015, that's a little out of date. We've actually progressed further than that as well. And this gives you an idea of how it pans out in terms of figures. See, we've got quite a bulk there in the middle part of the value chain. And what we're looking to do is balance this as well. And we are always engaging with all parts of the value chain in order to encourage them to come with us. The RJC standards covered over 10,000 premises, over 350,000 employees in a total of 60 countries. And RJC members are present in 29 countries, so truly global organization. And this, again, just gives you an idea of the code, what we call our Code of Practice, or COP, and the general requirements, responsible change in human rights, many of the things that Feriel was talking about with BPPs, and this is where we work very hard on harmonizing those standards as well, and it works very effectively. This is some of the services that we provide, training modules, topic webinars, help desk, and workshops and working groups as well. So there's a lot that members can get from this. I say it's not just a little bolt-on. This is a very serious, robust system of standards that is backed up by world-class training as well for members around the world. Just on, I'm going to come to this slide in a minute, but what I want to say is that the RJC, and going back to Botswana's leadership and getting that diamond equity is just as important in its protection as well as making it as well. We see the RJC as a business service that mitigates business risk, and goodness knows there's an awful lot of it around, and it's increasing. These are, in my view, some of the growing and emerging risks as well coming out. We have now gone beyond conflict diamonds. That is, the Kimberley process was set up directly to deal with the issue of conflict diamonds, and it did it extremely successfully. For those who criticize the Kimberley process, I would say that it does what it does extremely well. The problem, I think, is perception, and a lot of people are disappointed that it hasn't become a silver bullet, a one-stop shop for all issues that many of our stakeholders are concerned with. But this is where the RJC comes in and complements and supports the Kimberley process as well. It brings all of those solutions to many of the problems that people write about and talk about. The millennials will come on into the end, but product scarcity as well. It's been said many times this morning. You know, diamond is forever, but diamond mining is probably not forever. And we also have to look at how the competition is going to pan out in the future as well. And as formal supplies fall away, those artisanal, unmanaged, informal sectors in Central and Western Africa are going to come under ever more pressure. Much the same, but in a different way that they did in the late 90s as well. Synthetics, an enormous problem. Certainly not for me in terms of substitution, because they are two separate products. I mean, you're not going to invest all your emotional equity in something that was manufactured in a factory 6 months ago. Rather, you're going to be investing in something that was created under mysterious circumstances by Mother Nature several billion years ago. And she's not making any more of them. But it is something that we need to address, and it is something that we're looking at also in the RJC on how we can get proper disclosure and how that can be formalized and we can get greater discipline in the value chain. Legislation. This is really important. I am in no doubt whatsoever that if it hadn't been for the leadership of the industry, from De Beers, from the government of Botswana, and also, I should say, from civil society as well, there is no doubt that diamonds would have been on that list of the Dodd-Frank Act. But it wasn't, because the world saw that we were serious about putting our house in order. And the RJC is an evolution of that leadership. And what it provides is further evidence that the industry is coming together, not because it's forced to, but because it realizes it needs to. And so mitigating the risk of legislation there, and we all know what the cost of that would be, is very important too. Mandatory legislation is a snapshot that might address the issue to a lesser or greater extent at the time, but in 15 years, it could become irrelevant. It certainly could become burdensome, and it certainly will be very costly. But if you have a serious and robust system of standards that is global and takes in the whole of the value chain and engages properly with governments and civil society, you have a system that is flexible and can answer the needs of the industry and all the stakeholders that are participating as well going into the future. The link between social performance and access to finance. The diamond industry is going through one of its greatest challenges in recent memory at the moment. This is enough to make the banks nervous. But also behind that, we have Basel III. We have all of the social performance risk that the banks perceive. A leading figure in the diamond industry, about a year or so ago, was asked to close down an account he had at a bank in New York. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but purely because he was in the diamond industry. This is how nervous the banks are. RJC and other initiatives like that provide assurance to financiers, again, that we're serious, and again, that their money is worth investing in this industry in the future. So finally, on to the millennials, because that's an interesting demographic. Research, yes, has shown that they are largely self-interested and very demanding in their expectations. But they're also very well-informed and connected, and they care. They're able to demonstrate that care using very sophisticated methods that weren't available when I was young, and if I had a campaign I wanted to get up and going against a commodity or an industry or a company, it would have taken me months. These days, a campaign can go around the world in less than an hour, and it can gain momentum in no more than a day. And this can be very challenging as well. An industry that's under attack needs to come up with answers. And again, this is why BPPs, RJC, Kimberley Process, all these initiatives that this industry has brilliantly taken on its own accord come into play as well. But also the millennials, they are the consumers and the leaders of the future. Research again has shown that they are largely disillusioned with government's ability to make change. But the good news is that they believe that business can. And they are looking to business leaders to be able to work with them to make the change that they will demand of the goods and services that they purchase in the future. And this is a huge challenge, but a fantastic opportunity for this industry as well moving forward. This is protecting, again, that diamond equity, as we will one day come out of this slump. And we need to be stronger and to be able to deal with that demand as the competitive environment just grows, and it always will do. We're 10 years old. In the next decade, we have some challenges as well at the Responsible Jewellery Council. I dare say that the majority of you sitting here until today have probably never heard of the Responsible Jewellery Council. I hope that this brief presentation and the literature, and if you go on the site as well, will enlighten you more of that. But that's one of the key problems that certainly myself and my team have moving forward. We need to raise the profile of what it is we're doing. We need to show that if you've got a problem, we've got a solution. And we also need to reach out to the consumer. That is, after all, the title of what I'm supposed to be talking about today. And that is something that we haven't done to date, but that is something that we certainly will be doing. So, again, just in summary, I think this industry has come a long way, certainly in the years that I've been working for it, and certainly in the last 17 years. I think it's shown itself to have credible leadership credentials. And all of the initiatives that it has taken, most of them voluntary, have had an effect, have had a positive effect. And we just need to continue doing that. And I think, but I would say, wouldn't I, that the RJC is one of the most perfect vehicles to be able to go through that and take our case to the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andy. Now we have 20 minutes for our question and answer session. When you intervene, when you ask your question, I'd like to appeal to you to be concise and to indicate who you are addressing your question to. We want to get as many people as possible, so please, don't lecture. Two questions there. Yeah, please. And three. We'll take a first series of 3 questions.
Sit on. My name is Mapatsi. I'm from Gaborone and Ngamiland. And I want to address my question to Ineke. We appreciate that Tokafala plays in the role that is almost complementary to what we call local enterprise authority in Botswana, which was established following the promulgation of the Small Business Act. Do you see Small Business Act as helpful, the Act and the SMME policy? Do you see them helpful? Second, we have had many employees of the cutting and polishing industries. Some from Lepulule time and Soroe time, that is almost 20 years experience in cutting and polishing. Have you taken on any of those under mentorship and your enterprise development program? Would you say there is supportive financing system to support small-scale either jewelry manufacturing or cutting and polishing? Thank you.
Thank you. My question is also to Ineke. My name is Martina Seboni. Just 2 questions. Very interesting program that you run there. What is the average length of time that a budding entrepreneur spends under your program? And then secondly, are you at liberty to disclose the amount of resources, how much De Beers, De Botswana, and the government spend on an annual basis to keep the program going? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have a third question there. Here in front. Over here.
Hello, my question is, my name is...
I indicated here, in front here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is Sheila from the African Development Bank, and my question is to Ineke. I mean, I think what you're doing is commendable because, of course, at the heart of diversification is entrepreneurship. But I'm just intrigued. You train entrepreneurship. My view is that entrepreneurship is an innate sense of personal drive and not a skill per se. Business management is a skill, but not entrepreneurship. And I just wanted to hear from you, what is your experience then in turning people from being unenterprising into being enterprising?
Thank you. Ineke, can you take this first? All the questions were addressed to you.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it a little concise and try and go through in the order that they came in. On the SME Act, I have to admit I'm not intimately familiar with what the Act says, but I think in general, Botswana has quite a favorable legislative environment that helps SMEs. One thing in many countries that is really inhibitor to entrepreneurship is, for instance, registration and establishing your business. That is relatively straightforward in Botswana. The idea that there is a local enterprise authority, the idea that there is a SIDA, all those things are partial to a conducive enterprise development or SME landscape. On the employees with cutting and polishing experience, we don't have anybody in our program that fits that description right now. We also have never had an applicant that fit that description. We have no particular reason why we wouldn't have somebody like that in the program. A person such as that has not applied with our program. What we look at when we get application is it an existing business that has the potential to grow bigger? Is there a market for the product? Is there the entrepreneurial motivation and the skill set to grow to a bigger company? So that could be across all sorts of sectors. Is there a supporting financial system? I think there's a lot of product, like I just said, I think there's a lot of product and services out there that are meant to be for SMEs, and that's great. But I don't think that many financial institutions, and with that I include the government-run versions, are that great in communicating with really small businesses, and the other way around. For an entrepreneur, it's really complex to deal with a bank as well, and they also have a responsibility in understanding how to engage in that relationship. So I think there is a lot of potential in the financial systems that are there, but there is improvement needed. The average length of enrollment, it can be anywhere between 3 and 12 months, but the average is 8 months. So that was a short question. The dollar value of the program. I think I can share this because it's public knowledge. The Anglo-American, De Beers and Botswana have so far committed $2.5 million to the program, and that is to run from 2014 to 2016. So we're about 2/3 into that. We're currently still in conversation with the government on submitting an additional $2.5 million. That would then extend the program to 2018. Then the last question on entrepreneurship is a lifestyle, a philosophy, and a passion rather than a skill set. I agree with that. Not everybody is an entrepreneur. I know that I'm not, even though I work with them. What we do specifically is teach entrepreneurs that have the passion and the commitment to want to run their own business, the business skills that they do need to be able to do that. And that's some very elementary stuff to more complex depending on the individual need of the entrepreneurs the moment that they enroll in our program. Some started a business a year ago and are about 50,000 pula big, and others have been running for 12 years and have 8 million pula revenue. So obviously you have a different skill set that you start with, and we try to tailor-make our support to them. I hope that answered.
Thank you, Ineke. We'll take a second series of questions. There's a question over here that I missed in the last round. Is it you? Yeah. Is there another roving microphone?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. My name is Bino, again from Standard Chartered Bank. My question is to Feriel. You mentioned through the site audit process, there's a licensing that has a 3-year tenor. I want to understand, through the 3-year tenor, is there annual due diligence that is conducted on the site holders? For example, one of the things you talked to was financials submission. In the event of non-submission, from a banking perspective, is there a way and communication that is created or that can be looked at between De Beers and the banks? I'm talking primarily because there's a lot of expectation for the local banks to take part in the financing of the site holders. These are critical stakeholders to you who uptake your raw materials. But we are seeing on the global scale, there's a lot of aversion, risk aversion, and some of these things can be mitigated by some of these covenants which site holders are not adherent to from a submission and regulatory perspective.
Over here, just next to him.
Good afternoon. My name is Vijay Kalyanraman from Grand Thornton, Botswana. My question is to Andrew Bone. I heard in the presentation that you mentioned that being member of RJC, one of the advantages being access to finance could be better. Just wanted more insight into that, keeping in mind, particularly in the diamond industry, access to funding has not been that easy, and in what way could this intervention improve? Thank you.
Thanks. Here in the middle.
Thank you. Ineke, who will be bombarding you with questions this morning. My question is, my understanding of an EDP is it elevates a business to a higher level of operation. And when you mentioned your impact assessment model, you didn't touch on how many businesses have been able to access, to get into and be able to supply the Botswana and DBS. As you are aware, locally, you have a lot of SMEs who, in terms of whether it's infrastructural constraints, human resources constraints, or even processes constraints. I would like to know from so far, I know you've been in operation for 2 years, how many businesses in the program have been able to now be able to supply the Botswana and DBS, which are the main procuring entities really?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, my name is Dumi Mbaganyi from the Women in Business Association.
A hand over here. Over there. They were first. We'll come back to you.
My name is Victor. I come from the Sunday Standard newspaper. The first question goes to Feriel. I just want to know what criteria does DBS use when they select their site holders? And then the second, my two other questions goes to Tokafala. Well, I just wanted to know who exactly owns Tokafala, given the fact that the scheme has been there for almost 2 years now, but somehow it remains unpopular in the country. And then also whether you could give us any few names of entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, whether they were budding then or now they're successful, that you have supported so far. Thanks.
Okay. Let's give the panel the chance to answer those questions. Then we take a further round of questions. Yeah?
To answer Peter's question, I understand that you asked whether during the 3-year contract we run due diligence on our site holders. So we do. There are 2 types of due diligence programs that we run. The first one being the BPPs. We run that on an annual basis, but that covers social, environmental, and business integrity issues. We also run an AML program, anti-money laundering, where we screen all of the directors of our site holders and the ultimate beneficiaries, as well as the entities within their group on a cyclical basis before each site. Do we, in cases of non-compliance, can we tell the banks, do we tell the banks? So we never comment on individual site holder issues. What I can say is that all non-compliance is addressed, and if we're not able to address it, the last resort would be a termination of contract, because we do need to bear in mind that these site holders employ a large number of people that our standards are created to protect.
Okay. Ineke?
I think there's one question. Okay. On the question on supply chain linkages, the percentage, I don't know the actual number, I guess I could calculate it, but I know the percentage. The percentage of companies that from the 2014 cohort that was linked to Botswana in that period is 24%. I think that number should be higher. One of the lessons learned I touched upon is I think the role of big businesses and also the role the program can play in trying to link those. So that's definitely an area of focus going forward. To the gentleman sitting over there, I have to admit I could not hear your question. Could you say it again?
My question was, I understand that your scheme is funded by DBS, the government in Botswana. That does not necessarily mean that they own the scheme. So I wanted to know who's in control of the scheme, who owns the scheme. My question comes in the sense that the scheme has been there for almost 2 years now, but it somehow remains very unpopular compared to any other scheme that are there.
Okay.
Also, whether you could give us maybe names of any notable entrepreneurs that you have supported in your 2 years of existence that you could possibly say this is your achievement. Thanks.
Yes, on who owns it, I think the funders kind of own it. But if you're asking who the implementation partner is, that's an NGO that runs it, but the ownership is by the funding partners. So I'm not entirely sure if I'm missing something in the question there. On your notion that the program is unpopular, I would debate that. We're actually making the enrollment targets that were set, and we're doing slightly better than that. As I said, we've supported 150 entrepreneurs in a year and a half, or almost 2 years, with a team of 9 people. So I think that's a reasonable achievement. Names of entrepreneurs, yes, I think there is a breakfast, I know there's a breakfast tomorrow morning with 10 of our entrepreneurs, specifically for press also to meet with them, and we're trying to set up some visit to entrepreneurs if press is interested in that. If you want to have specific more information, we can definitely take this offline.
Okay. Andy?
Thank you. Sorry, was it Vijay? Vijay, thank you for your question. I hope you weren't inferring that in my presentation I sort of said that RJC membership sort of guaranteed access to finance. No, not that at all. What it demonstrates in a very competitive environment in trying to get access to finance is that it shows you're a strong, serious player. You're in it for the long run. This is an investment. It also helps the banks to be able to cover and mitigate their risk as well. This is what they're looking in partnership for, from the people that they finance. So what the RJC auditing process, the certification does, is provide some semblance of assurance in that respect. So it gives you a competitive advantage if you're out there trying to get scarce financing in that very crowded market. So just also one thing I probably didn't mention was that it is a robust system. Once you become a member, you've got a 2-year period to prepare yourself to be audited. Then you're audited by an independent auditor. The RJC has got nothing to do with that, and the member chooses that and engages with the auditor. The auditor then carries that out, and then you're certified if you pass for 3 years, and then you go through the whole process again. It's a 3-year cycle.
Thank you very much. We're going to take another round and the last round of questions. We missed one here in the middle, and then we'll take you. And in the back.
Thank you. My question is directed at Feriel.
Can you tell us who you are?
Apologies. Yes, I'm Maria da Silva. I worked for the Chamber of Mines in South Africa. Yes, my question, one of the slides that you had up there was in terms of compliance with BPPs, across a number of countries. And it just caught me that it was 100% in Canada, and I think 74% in South Africa, and around about 50% in Botswana, if I'm not mistaken. But what I'd like to know is, how come such a discrepancy in terms of, the level of compliance in those different countries, 100% in Canada and, 50% in some of the other places?
Okay.
Thank you.
One here.
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Is it me? Yeah, is it my turn?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have 2 questions. One going to Tokafala and the second one to Andrew Bone. So one going to Tokafala is about the scheme, the Tokafala scheme. I'm an entrepreneur myself, so I want to know how this program is being taken out to other entrepreneurs. How is it marketed? Because I don't think it has really been widely marketed. And then I want to know again, does it have a target entrepreneurs or target industries that it wants to assist? The second one is about the risks of the diamond industry. I've read in one of our local newspapers talking about manufacturing of the diamonds. They want to start manufacturing the diamonds in the factories. So can you give us light onto that?
Okay. We're not going to take any more questions, but Yeah.
Just a
Chris.
reminder, we are live streaming this, so we have questions coming in from around the world. And we have a question here from Callie T, who has asked if there's anything specific you could mention in relation to assisting young Botswana who own startups. So I think that's a question for Ineke to talk about entry into the Tokafala program.
Okay, fair is fair. You'll be the last one. Second row, and be concise, please.
Chairman, I was trying to get your attention to the former Vice President.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. I was beginning to wonder. Two questions, Ineke, Tokafala. Are there any community projects that you are supporting? Community projects. And then secondly, your outreach program, how is that being managed? Because as some questions have been raised before, it doesn't seem to be well known, at least in the outer communities. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll start with promotion on the program, and I think there were two questions that related to that. We're currently based in Gaborone, and like I said, we recently expanded to Francistown. So those are our core centers of operation. We do work with entrepreneurs that are from anywhere in the country, provided that they can travel to Francistown or Gaborone twice a month. And typically that is not an issue. When an entrepreneur finds us and we enroll them in the program, even if they come from Kasane, we can make that work. How we promote the program is a variety of things. We use press outlets like advertisements. There's one advertisement coming out either end of this week or next week about a start date of our next advisory cycle in January. We recently started doing a radio show on RB1. We use fairs and expos. My team currently is at the Consumer Expo here in town. So we use a variety of strategies to promote the program. We use existing entrepreneurs in the program also to spread the word. We use networking events to invite other entrepreneurs. So there's a variety of things. Would I like the program to be known more? Yes, absolutely. So I'm hoping today would help for that as well. But there is actually quite a lot of activity taking place. On the profile or the sector of entrepreneurs we work with, we don't take a sector approach because what we focus on is general business skills. This applies across any sector. So the profile that we're actually looking for consists of the following variables. It needs to be a locally owned business. It needs to be an existing business, which threshold we put at about 6 months to a year of proven transactional track record. And there needs to be potential in the business. And the manager, the owner needs to be the operational manager of the business because that's the person we mentor. To that links the question from the person that is watching us live on startups. We do not explicitly support startups. I believe startups are an incredibly important element of entrepreneurship and anywhere in the world, certainly also Botswana. And I do think that at the moment, possibly startup support is underserviced in Botswana. It's an area that I think many different stakeholders should look at. But Tokafala as such is designed to focus specifically on existing businesses and help them make that step from being small to medium size, because that's where you start in creating employment. On community projects, we don't have a specific link to community-based projects other than if entrepreneurs are active in communities. I'm not entirely sure if I understood the question correctly, but if you're asking if we're supporting community organizations or cooperatives, no. The challenge with that is that we mentor one individual, and the more you look at community-based organizations, the more individuals become involved in it, and makes it really challenging for us to provide that support. But we're willing to explore possibilities of looking at that, if that is an area of interest. I think I covered all of them, did I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. We've run out of time, the organizers are telling me. So thank you very much for your contributions. Can we put our hands together and thank our presenters for excellent presentations, but also for fielding the numerous questions that were put to them.